The contractor's first pry bar split the fence my wife and I built with our own hands. Not the HOA's fence, not common property. Mine, the one standing inside the property line shown in my recorded deed and county survey. For 22 years, HOA Karen stood behind him with a clipboard and said, the board had voted by the time the first board hit the grass. I was already holding the county survey, the official meeting minutes, and the video that would end her presidency. Let me back up. The first thing I heard was not the truck. It was the fence. Old cedar makes a particular sound when it gives way. Not a clean snap, not a loud crash, more like a long, tired crack, as if the wood is trying to hold on for one more second before somebody forces it apart. I was standing at my kitchen sink when I heard it. At first, I thought a tree limb had fallen somewhere behind the house. Then, I looked through the window and saw a man in a gray work shirt standing in my backyard with a pry bar in his hands. Behind him stood Linda Whitmore. Most people in Maple Ridge called her Linda to her face. Everyone called her HOA Karen when she was not close enough to hear it. She was wearing white pants, a navy blazer, oversized sunglasses, and the kind of smile that told me she had not come to talk, which she had come to win. In her left was a clipboard, in her right hand was a yellow violation notice. She held it up like it was a court order. It was not. The contractor pushed the pry bar under the top rail of my fence and leaned his weight into it. The cedar board split. One piece dropped into the grass. That fence had stood behind my house for 22 years. My wife, Elaine, and I built it the second summer. After we moved in, we did not hire a crew. We did not finance it. We bought the cedar posts ourselves, borrowed a post hole digger from my brother-in-law, and spent 3 weekends putting it up one section at a time. Elaine said every home needed one private corner where the world could not walk in uninvited, so we built one. Inside that fence, she planted roses along the back line. Pink ones first, then white ones, then a stubborn red bush that refused to bloom for 2 years, and then suddenly took over half the bed. She hung yellow lanterns from the inside rail every 4th of July. She tied a little brass wind chime to the corner post near the patio because she liked the sound it made when summer storms rolled in. When she got sick, that backyard became the last peaceful place we had, and now HOA Karen had sent a stranger into it with a pry bar. I opened the back door and stepped onto the patio. Karen turned before the contractor did. Mr. Bennett, she said, raising her voice just enough for the man to hear, you were given proper notice. The board voted. This fence is coming down today. The board voted. That was the sentence she had practiced. I looked at the contractor. Did she give you written authorization from the board? His hands stopped moving for half a second. Karen answered before he could. He doesn't need to see anything from you, she said. I am the HOA president. That sentence mattered. Not because it was true, because it was being recorded. By 6 feet above my patio door, my security camera was pointed directly at the side gate into my backyard. It had captured the contractor entering through the side gate. It had captured Karen following him in. It had captured the first board coming loose. And now it had captured Linda Whitmore, saying, in her own voice, that her title gave her authority over my private property. I did not yell. I did not step toward the contractor. I did not call her names. That was what Karen wanted. I knew that by then. Karen had a way of pushing people until they reacted, then using the reaction as evidence. Angry homeowner, hostile resident, refusal to comply, threatening behavior. She had used those phrases before. I had seen them in emails. I had seen them in meeting notes. I had heard neighbors repeat them quietly, like warnings. So I gave her nothing. I looked at the broken board lying in the grass. Then I looked at the rosebed. One of the removed rails had landed inches from Elaine's pink rosebush. The brass hook, where her wind chime used to hang, was still screwed into the wood. The chime itself was inside my garage by then. I had taken it down after she passed, because the sound was too much for me in the evenings. Karen followed my eyes. Sentimental value does not override community standards, she said. That was the closest I came to losing my temper. Not when the board cracked. Not when the contractor stepped through my gate. That sentence, because people like Karen always hide cruelty inside official language. They do not say, I do not care what your wife loved. They say community standards. They do not say, I want control. They say property values. They do not say I made this decision myself. They say the board voted. I asked the contractor again. Who hired you? He looked at Karen. She said the association authorized corrective action. That is not what I asked. The contractor shifted his weight. Karen's smile tightened. This is not a deposition. Mr. Bennett. No, I said, it is my backyard. For the first time that morning, she stopped smiling only for a second. Then she turned back to the contractor and said, continue. He did not move right away. That was when I knew he had not been told the full story by that morning. The damage was already enough to make most people panic. One section was loose. Another was cracked through the rail. The corner post nearest Elaine S. Rosebed had twisted out of alignment. Later, the repair estimate would come to $3,800. Karen had already added $150 per day continuing violation fine to my HOA account. She had also added a $600 emergency enforcement fee. Emergency. That was her word. There was no emergency. The fence was not falling into a sidewalk. It was not blocking a road. It was not touching common property. It was standing exactly where it had stood for 22 years, inside the same line shown on my recorded deed and the county survey map. But Karen did not think. I knew that that was her mistake. Inside my kitchen on the table, Elaine used to cover with tax folders every March. I had a binder, not a pile. A binder. Tab 1, the first violation notice. Tab 2, the envelope it came in. Tab 3, Karen's email claiming my fence encroached on common area. Tab 4, my recorded property deed. Tab 5, the county survey map showing the rear property line. Tab 6, the HOA bylaws. Tab 7, my certified letter asking for the exact rule, the board vote date, the meeting minutes, and the written authority allowing anyone to enter my private lot. Tab 8, the management company S. Response. No board vote located, no removal authorization located, no record showing the fence sat on common area, and now, standing in my backyard, wearing sunglasses and holding a clipboard, Karen was building. Tab 9 with her own mouth. I took out my phone. Karen watched me carefully. Are you calling your lawyer? She asked. No, I called the non-emergency sheriff's line. Karen laughed softly, just enough for the contractor to hear. You are calling the police on the HOA? No, I said. I am documenting unauthorized entry and removal of property from my private lot. That word changed the air. Documenting people like Karen hate that word. They like arguments. They like emotion. They like frightened homeowners who pay fake fines because the letterhead looks official. They do not like timelines, certified mail, county records, meeting minutes, or cameras pointed at the place where they are standing. The dispatcher took my address, I explained, slowly, that a contractor had entered my fenced backyard under instructions from an HOA board member who had not produced written board authorization, a court order, or any document proving legal authority to remove my fence. Karen stepped closer. You are making a very serious mistake, she said. That was the second sentence that mattered. The camera caught that one too. While we waited, Karen paced near the broken fence and spoke in the smooth, clipped tone she used at HOA meetings. She said the board had broad enforcement discretion. She said homeowners could not simply ignore violations. She said old approvals did not matter if current standards had changed. She said my refusal to comply had forced her hand. Every phrase sounded official. None of it answered the question. Where was the vote? Where was the rule? Where was the written authorization? A sheriff's deputy arrived 17 minutes later. By then, two neighbors were outside pretending to check mail. One of them was Frank Miller from 3 houses down. Frank had paid Karen $1,200 the previous year, after she threatened to fine him over a shed that had been approved long before she joined the board. He did not wave. He just stood there watching. Karen walked toward the deputy. Before I could say a word, "Officer," she said, changing her voice into something softer, "this is a civil HOA compliance matter. Mr. Bennett has been refusing to cooperate for weeks." The deputy looked at the broken fence, then at the contractor, then at me. I said, "I have the deed, the survey, the bylaws, the management company email, and the meeting minutes inside." Karen cut in. "He is attempting to confuse a simple enforcement action." The deputy held up one hand. "I am going to speak with everybody one at a time." It was not a dramatic moment. No one was arrested. No one shouted. The deputy did not rule on a property dispute in my backyard, and I did not expect him to. That is not how these things work. Karen knew that too, which is why her confidence started to return. Once she realized the deputy was not going to put her in handcuffs over a fence dispute. He took names. He wrote down the contractor's company. He asked Karen whether she had written board authorization with her. She said the board discussed this extensively. He asked again, "Do you have the authorization with you?" She said, "Not physically." He wrote that down. Then he asked the contractor who had hired him. The contractor looked miserable. The request came from Mrs. Whitmore. he said. From the HOA office? From her email. Karen snapped, that is completely irrelevant. The deputy wrote that down too. Then he told everyone the same thing deputies tell people when a property dispute is starting to look bigger than a fence. He said the property issue itself may be civil, but the damage and entry would be documented. He said, no one should remove additional property without clear written authority. He said I should preserve my documents and video. He said Karen should have the HOA's attorney contact me if she believed the board had legal authority. Karen heard only the part she wanted. Civil matter. That phrase put the smile back on her face as the deputy left. She looked at me and said quietly enough that only I and the camera could hear it. This is not over. She was right. It was not over, but not in the way she thought. By lunchtime, 3 fence sections were damaged. 1 post was split, and Elaine's rose bed was exposed to the street. For the first time in 22 years, Karen had already emailed the board, claiming that I had created a hostile environment during lawful enforcement activity. She copied the management company. She copied the architectural review committee. She copied 2 board members who had not even known she was sending a contractor that morning. And because Karen could not help herself, she wrote 1 sentence at the bottom of that email that would matter more than anything she had said in the yard. As HOA president, I authorized the emergency removal after repeated homeowner non-compliance. I printed that email, punched 3 holes in it, and placed it behind tab 9. Karen thought she had damaged my fence. What she had really damaged was her own defense. That 1 email would eventually cost her the HOA presidency, force the board to refund every fence fine she had issued, and reopen complaints from neighbors who had been too scared to fight her. But to understand why she wanted that fence gone so badly, you have to go back 3 weeks earlier, back to the first yellow violation notice, taped to my front door, back to the phrase common area encroachment, and back to the moment I realized Linda Whitmore was not enforcing the rules, where she was inventing authority and hoping no one would check the record. 3 weeks earlier, the fence was not broken. It was just there. That may sound simple, but if you have lived in a house long enough, you know exactly what I mean. Some things become part of the shape of your life. For me, that fence was one of those things. My name is Daniel Bennett. I was 63 years old when Linda Whitmore decided my backyard needed to become her personal project. I had lived in Maple Ridge for 22 years. Before I retired, I spent 36 years as a line supervisor for Georgia Power, which meant I knew a few things about easements, work orders, right-of-way maps, access permissions, and the difference between somebody saying they had authority and somebody proving it on paper. I was not a lawyer, but I had spent most of my adult life around crews, permits, property markers, and recorded access rights. I had learned that the most dangerous person on a job site was not always the one holding a tool. Sometimes it was the one holding a clipboard, and acting like the clipboard was the law. My father used to say, paper does not get nervous. He was right. People forget, people exaggerate, people panic. Paper sits there and waits. Elaine and I bought the house in Maple Ridge in the summer of 2002. It was not fancy. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, brick front, a little breakfast nook that caught the morning light, and a backyard that was mostly red Georgia clay when we first moved in. Elaine saw a garden. I saw work. She was right, of course, that first year. We saved for the fence instead of taking a vacation. The old HOA manager, Harold Price, told us the design was fine as long as the height stayed under 6 feet, and the stain matched an approved natural wood color. Elaine kept the email. I still have it, printed. Dated August 14, 2002. Subject line, rear fence approval. Lot 47. The fence went up over 3 weekends. My brother-in-law helped on Saturdays. Elaine brought lemonade outside and ignored me when I told her not to carry boards. We measured from the rear pins, shown on the closing survey. We kept the fence 2 feet inside the property line because I did not want any argument ever. That was how I was raised. Leave a little room. Keep the record clean. Do the work right the first time. For more than 2 decades, nobody said one word about that fence. Not the old hoe. Not the management company. Not the county inspector who came out when we added the patio in 2011. Nobody then. Linda Whitmore became HOA president. Linda had moved into Maple Ridge about 5 years before Elaine passed. At first, I barely noticed her. She was one of those neighbors who always seemed busy, always walking fast, always carrying a folder or a reusable coffee cup, always speaking as if she were already late for a meeting she had organized herself. She started with small things. Trash cans left out, past noon, holiday lights staying up too long, mailbox posts painted the wrong shade of black. Then she joined the Architectural Review Committee, became chair, and when the previous HOA president resigned, Linda ran unopposed and became president of the board. Within 2 months, Maple Ridge started receiving more yellow violation notices than Christmas cards. At first, people laughed about it. Then the fines followed. $50, $150 a day if the homeowner did not correct what Linda called continued non-compliance. She liked that phrase. Continued non-compliance. It made normal people sound like criminals. Day 1 started on a Tuesday morning. I remember that because Tuesday was the day I always drove to the cemetery before lunch. Elaine had been gone nearly 3 years by then, but I still went every Tuesday when the weather allowed. I would bring coffee and sit on the bench near the little oak tree and tell her the neighborhood gossip she would have pretended not to enjoy. That morning, I opened the front door and saw a yellow paper taped just below the window. Violation notice. My name, my address, lot 47. The alleged violation read: unauthorized rear fence encroaching upon common area and inconsistent with current community standards. Correction required within 48 hours. Failure to comply may result in fines, legal fees, enforcement action, and removal at homeowner expense. I read it once standing at the door, then again at the kitchen table. The phrase that caught my eye was not community standards. I expected that from Linda. The phrase that caught my eye was common area, because there was no common area behind my fence. There was my backyard. Then there was a drainage strip on the other side of my rear property line. Then the retention pond beyond that. My fence did not touch the drainage strip, it never had. The closing survey showed that clearly. The fence sat inside my lot, not on the line and not over it. I set the notice on the table. I made coffee. Then I opened the old blue closing folder. Elaine had labeled in her neat handwriting, House Maple Ridge important. Inside were the deed, the settlement statement, the title policy, the original plat, the 2002 survey, the fence approval email, the patio permit, and 22 years of records. Most people throw away, because they do not imagine a day will come when a neighbor with a clipboard tries to rewrite their property line. Day 1. I did not call Linda. I did not knock on her door. I did not post in the neighborhood Facebook group. I sent one email, Mrs. Whitmore. I received the violation notice, dated September 5, regarding my rear fence. Please provide the specific bylaw or covenant section allegedly violated, the survey or plat showing the alleged encroachment, the date of the board vote authorizing enforcement, on a copy of the meeting minutes reflecting that vote for your convenience. I have attached the 2002 fence approval and the survey from my closing folder. No insults, no threats, no emotion. Facts only, she replied 41 minutes later. Mr. Bennett, the board is not required to debate settled enforcement matters with individual homeowners. Your fence has been reviewed and determined to be inconsistent with current community standards. You have 48 hours to submit a removal plan. Submit a removal plan, not repair, not restain, not request a variance removal. Day 2, I called the management company. Not to argue. To ask one question: is there any recorded amendment, updated plat, board vote, or common area map showing that lot 47's rear fence sits on HOA property? The woman who answered introduced herself as Denise. She sounded tired in the way management company employees sound tired when they have heard one board member's name too many times. She put me on hold. When she came back, she said, I do not see any recorded amendment to the plat. I do not see any enforcement vote attached to your lot. I see a landscaping discussion in last month's minutes, but no motion and no vote. I wrote that down. Date, time, name, exact words. Then I asked her to send it by email. That email arrived at 3:18 p.m. I printed it. That became tab 6. Day 3. I drove to the county records office. I wanted certified copies, not screenshots. Screenshots are fine until someone says they are incomplete. Certified copies do not argue. I pulled the recorded plat for Maple Ridge, the deed to my lot, and the most recent amendment to the HOA common area description. The clerk looked through the index twice. No change to lot 47, she said. I asked her to repeat it and wrote it down exactly. No change to lot 47. Then I paid for the certified copies and drove home with them in a brown envelope on the passenger seat. That became tab 7. By then, the binder had started to take shape. Tab 1, the yellow violation notice. Tab 2, Linda S. first email. Tab 3, the 2002 fence approval from Harold Price. Tab 4, my recorded deed. Tab 5, the closing survey. Tab 6, the management company email. Tab 7, certified county records. At the time, I still thought this might end with someone sensible telling Linda she had overreached. I underestimated how much Linda needed to be right. Day 4, she came to my door. Not alone, she brought Marcy Bell from the Architectural Review Committee, a woman who looked apologetic. Before anyone said a word, Linda stood on the porch with her clipboard tucked against her chest. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "I wanted to give you one final opportunity to resolve this neighbor to neighbor." That was another phrase. Linda, like neighbor to neighbor. She usually used it right before threatening someone. I opened the storm door but did not step outside. I asked for the rule, the map, and the meeting minutes. I said. Linda's expression tightened. "The board has broad discretion to preserve property values. Do you have a survey showing my fence is on common area? The common area issue has already been reviewed." "By who?" "The board." "What date?" She looked down at her clipboard. Marcy looked away. Linda said, "You are focusing on technicalities." "No," I said. "I am focusing on the record." For a second, the porch was quiet. Then Linda lowered her voice. "Old approvals do not protect old mistakes, Mr. Bennett." I said nothing. Right, she stepped a little closer to the storm door. "And your memories are not an exemption from the rules." That was the moment I knew. This was not a misunderstanding. It was not about the fence being unsafe. It was not about common area. It was not even really about community standards. It was about Linda deciding that my house, my yard, my old cedar fence, and the quiet little garden Elaine left behind did not fit the picture she wanted to sell. I said, "Send me the documents." Linda smiled again, the same smile she would wear 3 weeks later while a contractor split my fence apart. "You have 48 hours, she said. Then she turned and walked back down my porch steps. Marcy stayed half a second longer. She looked at me, then at the yellow copy of the notice Linda had left on my doormat. Very quietly, she said, "I would keep everything." Then she followed Linda down the driveway. I closed the door, picked up the notice, punched 3 holes in it, and added it to the binder. That should have been the point where Linda slowed down. Instead, day 6 brought the letter that turned a simple fake violation into a paper trail she would never be able to explain. It arrived by certified mail. Final enforcement warning. The fine was $150 a day. The letter claimed the fence was a continuing violation. It claimed my refusal to remove. It was harming neighborhood property values. It claimed the board had reviewed the matter and determined that corrective action was necessary. And at the bottom, in bold letters, Linda wrote the sentence that told me exactly how far she was willing to go. The board has voted unanimously to authorize corrective action if the homeowner refuses compliance. I read that sentence twice, then I opened the email from D. Nice at the management company again. No motion, no vote, no enforcement authorization attached to Lot 47. I placed Linda a certified letter behind. Tap. Then I wrote one sentence on a yellow sticky note and put it on the inside cover of the binder. If she is lying about the vote, let her keep saying it, because sooner or later, she would say it in front of the wrong people. And when she did, the record would already be waiting. That was when Linda stopped pretending. This was about clarification. The certified letter sat on my kitchen table, still half inside the envelope, with final enforcement warning across the top. I read it once. Then I read it again, with a yellow highlighter in my hand. $150 per day, a $600 administrative processing fee, possible lien proceedings, possible removal of the fence at homeowner expense. People like Linda love the word possible. It lets them threaten everything while committing to nothing. It makes a retired man imagine court fees, Sheriff S. notices, and his house buried under paperwork he does not understand. That was the point. Fear first, facts later. I had already placed it behind tab 8. Then I wrote the daily fine amount on a sheet of notebook paper and started a running total. I tracked it the way Linda wanted me to fear it. 150, then 300, then 450. By the end of the first week, Linda claimed I owed the HOA $650, including her administrative fee, not for blocking a sidewalk, not for damaging common property, for refusing to remove a fence that had been approved in writing 22 years earlier and sat inside my recorded property line. On day 8, she sent another email. "Mr. Bennett, your continued refusal to comply is creating unnecessary expense for the association. The board voted unanimously to proceed with all enforcement remedies available under the governing documents. The board voted unanimously. There it was again, same phrase, same confidence. No minutes, no motion, no record. I printed the email and added it to the binder, tab 9, then I sent one reply. Please provide the date of the unanimous board vote and the approved meeting minutes reflecting that vote. She did not answer that question. Instead, she forwarded my reply to the Architectural Review Committee and copied the management company. Her message said, "Mr. Bennett continues to obstruct enforcement and appears to be attempting to delay corrective action through excessive document demands." Excessive document for the rule, the map, the minutes, and the authority. I printed that too, tab 10. By day 10, Linda moved the fight from paper to public pressure. She posted in the Maple Ridge Residence Facebook group at 7:42 in the morning. She did not use my name. She did not have to. Some homeowners believe personal attachments excuse violations that affect all of our property values. The board has a responsibility to protect the appearance, safety, and uniformity of Maple Ridge. We appreciate residents who respect community standards instead of forcing costly enforcement. Within 20 minutes, the comments started. "Is this about the old fence on Willow Court? I wondered when someone would deal with that." Then Frank Miller commented, "Does the board have meeting minutes for this vote?" His comment lasted 9 minutes. Then it disappeared. I took screenshots before it did. Time-stamped. Full screen. Tab 11. That afternoon, I saw Linda outside the clubhouse after a pool committee meeting. She was standing with 2 neighbors near the bulletin board, holding that same clipboard against her chest. I was close enough to hear her say, "Some people think grief gives them special treatment." Nobody said Elaine's name. Nobody had to. Linda saw me and smiled. I did not answer. I wrote down the time, the place, and the 2 witnesses. Anger is only useful if you make it do paperwork. Tab 12. That evening, Frank knocked on my side door. Frank was 71, a retired machinist with bad knees. He lived 3 houses down and had one of those little backyard sheds that looked like it had been there forever. "She did this to me last year," he said. "The shed?" He nodded. Said it was unapproved. "I told her it was there when we bought the house," she said. "Old approvals did not matter under current standards." That phrase again. "How much did you pay?" $1,200 fine. Review fee. Late fee. I just wanted her off my back. He looked embarrassed when he said it. Linda had looked at him and seen someone easier to scare than to prove wrong. "Do you still have the letters?" I asked. "My wife keeps everything." "Good," I said. "Do not throw them away before he left," he said. "Daniel, she is telling people you are unstable." "Where?" Facebook comments before she deleted them, and now around the clubhouse. There it was. Elaine, Linda had found a way to make grief sound like non-compliance the next morning. Day 11. I sent certified letters to 3 places. 1 to Linda and the HOA board, 1 to the management company, 1 to the Architectural Review Committee. Each letter asked the same 5 questions: the exact covenant section, the survey or plat showing encroachment, the date of the board vote, the official meeting minutes, the written authority for any third party to enter my lot or remove property, recertified mail return. Receipt requested. I also requested a formal hearing to appeal the fines, because I wanted the board to either prove the violation on the record or admit there was no record. Tab 13. On day 12, the management company replied privately, "Denies again. Mr. Bennett, we have forwarded your request to the board at this time. Our office does not have a recorded vote authorizing removal. Please do not allow any physical removal unless written board authorization is provided." That was careful language, corporate language. But it was enough. I printed it. Tab 14. On day 13, Linda escalated again. The subject line was notice of intent to lien. She claimed my account was delinquent. She claimed the unpaid fines were valid assessments. She claimed failure to pay could result in a lien against my property. By then, Linda's fake balance had reached $2,850. At the bottom, in bold, she wrote, "The board voted unanimously to pursue lien remedies if payment is not received within 10 days. The board voted unanimously." Again. By then, I had requested the meeting minutes twice. The management company had no vote on record. The board secretary had not answered, and Linda was still putting the same lie in writing. I printed the lien threat, tab 15. Then I did something. Linda did not expect I paid nothing, not $1 bullies. Count on small payments. They count on people sending money just to stop the problem. Then, They used the payment as proof that the homeowner accepted the fine, recognized the violation, and admitted the issue was legitimate. I was not giving Linda that on day 15. She showed up at my house again. This time, she brought a man I did not recognize. He wore a bright orange vest, carried a tape measure, and had no company logo on his truck. Linda introduced him as our inspection contractor. I asked for his name. He gave me his first name only. I asked for his license or business card. He looked at Linda. She said, "He is here on association business." I said, "He is standing on my driveway." Linda lifted her clipboard. The board authorized an exterior inspection. "What date?" she sighed. "Mr. Bennett, the board is not obligated to walk you through every internal procedure." I looked at the man in the orange vest. "You do not have permission to enter my backyard," Linda said. "The covenants grant access for enforcement." "Show me where." She tapped the clipboard. "I do not carry the entire governing documents door to door." "No," I said. "You just carry the threats." The man in the vest took half a step back. My doorbell camera was recording from the front porch. My side camera caught the driveway. My phone was in my shirt pocket recording audio. Linda stood on my driveway and said, "If you force the association to hire a removal contractor, every dollar will be charged back to you." There it was, removal contractor. Out loud, on camera, I asked, "Has the board voted to hire one?" "Yes." "What date?" She looked away. "That information will be provided at the appropriate time." I almost smiled, because in that moment, Linda was not tightening a net around me. She was stepping into one on day 16. Another neighbor called me. Her name was Patricia. She lived on the corner near the pond. Her mother had used a wheelchair after a stroke, and 2 years earlier, Linda had forced Patricia to remove a small wooden ramp from the front walkway because it was inconsistent with exterior design standards. Patricia fought for 6 weeks before the management company quietly allowed the ramp back. She never apologized, Patricia said. She just stopped answering emails. "Do you have the emails?" "All of them." "Keep them," I said. There were now 3 of us. Frank with the shed, Patricia with the ramp, me with the fence. Linda thought she was dealing with isolated homeowners. One notice at a time, one scared neighbor at a time, one private fine at a time. But records do not stay isolated forever. On day 18, the Facebook post changed. Linda created a new thread titled "Maintaining Standards During Difficult Transitions." It was worse than the first one. She wrote that some residents struggled when personal circumstances made them resistant to necessary community updates. She wrote that exceptions based on emotion would create an unfair precedent. She still did not use my name. She did not need to. I took screenshots. Then I took a photo of Elaine's rosebush beside the fence. I put both in the binder. Tab 16 was the post. Tab 17 was the rosebush. Because one day somebody was going to see exactly what Linda had called an unfair precedent. On day 9, the board secretary finally replied to my certified letter. His name was Alan Price. No relation to Harold, the old manager who approved the fence. Alan was new to the board. He wrote one short paragraph. "Mr. Bennett, I am still reviewing records. I do not recall a formal vote regarding removal of your fence. I remember a general discussion of landscaping enforcement, but I am not aware of approved minutes authorizing contractor action." I read that paragraph 3 times. Then I printed it. Tab 18. That was the first crack in Linda S.'s story. Not from me, from her own board. I forwarded Alan S.'s email to the management company and asked again for the official minutes. No commentary, no accusation, just the request. On day 20, Linda sent the email that would later become one of the most important documents in the entire case. The subject line was, "Enforcement will proceed. Mr. Bennett, your continued refusal to remove the non-compliant fence leaves the association no choice. If you will not remove it voluntarily, I will arrange removal myself and charge all costs to your account. This matter has been fully authorized by the board." I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after reading that. Outside, the afternoon light was hitting the top rail of the fence. Elaine's red rosebush had finally bloomed again after a dry summer. One flower had opened toward the patio, bright and stubborn. I thought about calling the HOA attorney. I thought about sending every document I had. I thought about ending it right there. But if I stopped Linda then, she would deny the rest. She would say she meant future action. She would say arrange removal was just a phrase. She would say the board had discussed it. She would say I misunderstood, so I did what my father taught me to do. When someone makes a claim without paper, I let the record keep breathing. I printed her email, punched 3 holes in it, placed it behind tab 19. Then, I wrote one note under it. Wait, because Linda Whitmore had just told me exactly what she planned to do, and all I had to do was let her believe nobody was watching when she did it. Day 23 was the morning. Linda Whitmore mistook silence for weakness. It was 8:17 when the first board came. Loose, you already know the sound. Old cedar splitting under pressure. The contractor stood in my backyard with a pry bar in his hands. Linda stood behind him with sunglasses, a clipboard, and the kind of smile people wear when they think they have finally forced someone into surrender. But what Linda did not know was that day 23 was no longer just another HOA dispute. By then, I had 19 tabs in the binder. By then, the management company had already written that there was no recorded vote authorizing removal. By then, the board secretary had already admitted he did not recall any formal vote. By then, Linda had put the same false sentence in writing again and again. The board voted unanimously. The board authorized corrective action. The board approved removal, and that morning she finally acted on the lie. When I asked the contractor who hired him, he looked like a man who had just realized he had walked into the wrong backyard. Linda answered for him. The association authorized corrective action, but the work order told a different story. The contractor's phone showed the request had come from Linda's personal email address, not the HOA office. His invoice listed emergency fence removal and named Linda Whitmore as the requesting party. There was no board resolution attached, no written authorization, no management company approval, no court order, just Linda. That was the big mistake. Not the letter, not the Facebook post, not even the fake lien threat. The big mistake was that Linda took a paper lie and turned it into physical damage. I called the non-emergency sheriff's line. The deputy came, he took names. He wrote down the contractor quest company. He wrote down that Linda did not have written authorization with her. He wrote down that the contractor said the request came from Linda's email. Then, he told everyone not to remove additional property without clear written authority. Linda heard civil matter and smiled. I heard preserve your documents and video. That afternoon I downloaded the camera footage from 3 angles, the back patio camera, the side gate camera, the front door camera. I saved the raw files to a hard drive. Then I copied them to a second drive. Then I emailed them to myself. Evidence is never just one thing. It is the original file, the backup, the timestamp, the email chain, the invoice, the report number, and the person who can say where each piece came from. By 5:30 that evening, tab 20 was the sheriff's incident number. Tab 21 was the contractor invoice. Tab 22 was the video file list. Tab 23 was Linda's email to the board, claiming she had authorized the removal as HOA president. Tab 24 was Denise's warning from the management company. Please do not allow any physical removal unless written board authorization is provided. And tab 25 arrived the next morning. It was an email from the contractor. After I requested the work order, he sent the statement to the management company and copied me. It said, in plain language, that Linda Whitmore had represented herself as fully authorized by the HOA board, stated the homeowner had been notified, and instructed him to begin removal immediately. He added one sentence at the bottom. I was not provided any board resolution or written authorization beyond Mrs. Whitmore's request. I printed that sentence twice, one copy for the binder, one copy for the meeting. 3 days later, the HOA announced a special meeting at the clubhouse. The subject line said, Fence Enforcement Matter. Lot 47. Linda sent the announcement herself. I knew because she used the same phrase she always used when she wanted people to arrive already angry. Homeowner refusal to comply has created unnecessary cost and disruption for the association. She wanted an audience, so I gave her one. I brought the binder. I brought printed copies of the deed, the county survey, the 2002 approval email, the management company responses, Alan's email, the sheriff's incident number, the contractor invoice, the contractor statement, and still images from the security footage. Frank came. Patricia came. Marcy Bell came too. And when she saw me carry the binder into the clubhouse, she looked down at the floor like she already knew what was coming. Linda stood at the front of the room beside the board table. She had dressed for victory. Cream blazer, pearl earrings, printed agenda, yellow, folded. Always the clipboard. She opened the meeting with a statement. Tonight, the board will address a serious matter of continued homeowner non-compliance. Mr. Bennett was given multiple opportunities to resolve this privately. Unfortunately, His refusal to cooperate forced the association to take corrective action. I sat in the second row and listened. By then, I knew the best way to handle Linda was to let her finish her version first. The more she talked, the more specific she became. The more specific she became, the less room she had to escape. She said the fence was on common area. She said the board had voted. She said the removal was authorized. She said the contractor acted on behalf of the association. She said, my grief over Elaine had made me unable to accept necessary change. That last sentence changed the room. Even people who had been nodding stopped. Frank turned his head slowly toward the board table. Patricia closed her eyes. I did not move. Linda looked at me and said, Mr. Bennett, you may respond briefly. Briefly, that was generous of her. I stood up with the binder in my hands. I have 6 documents, 1 contractor statement, and 1 full video, I said. Linda smiled like she thought that sounded small. It was not small, it was enough. I started with the deed. This is the recorded deed for Lot 47. It identifies the rear boundary of my property. This is the certified county survey showing the same boundary. My fence sits inside that line. I handed copies to Alan, the board secretary. Then I handed copies to Denise from the management company. Linda interrupted. The issue is not ownership. The issue is community standards. I turned 1 page. This is the violation notice Linda sent me. It says, the fence encroaches on common area. The room went quiet. I held up the survey again. It does not then. I moved to the second layer. This is the 2002 approval email from Harold Price, the home manager at the time. Rear fence approval. Lot 47. Height approved. Stain approved. Location approved. Linda said, old approvals do not override current standards. That may be your opinion, I said, but it is not what your notice alleged. That distinction mattered. Linda had not fined me for stain color. She had not fined me for height. She had accused me of being on common area. The survey killed that claim, so she reached for a new one. The board has broad discretion, she said. I opened tab 18. This is an email from Alan Price, the board secretary. He wrote, I do not recall a formal vote regarding removal of your fence. I remember a general discussion of landscaping enforcement, but I am not aware of approved minutes authorizing contractor action. Alan looked like he wanted his chair to swallow him. Linda turned toward him. Alan, that was not meant as an official statement, he said quietly. It was accurate. That was the first crack the room could hear. There was no motion, no quorum record, no vote, and no approved minutes authorizing anyone to touch my fence. I moved to the third layer. This is the management company's email. It states, there was no recorded vote authorizing removal. It also says, please do not allow any physical removal unless written board authorization is provided. Denise looked at Linda. We sent that before the contractor entered his yard, she said. Linda's face changed, not much, but enough. I moved to the fourth layer. This is the contractor invoice. The request came from Mrs. Whitmore's personal email, not the HOA office. There is no board authorization attached. Then I held up the contractor statement, and this is his written statement. He says Linda told him the board had fully authorized the removal, but she never gave him a board resolution or written approval. Linda said, that is a contractor billing issue. No, I said, it is an authority issue. Then I played the video. Not a short clip. The full clip. I started 30 seconds before Linda entered the side gate and let it run through the first removal, my questions, her answers, and the moment she told the contractor to continue. Short clips let people say context is missing. So I gave them context. The clubhouse watched Linda enter my backyard. They watched the contractor pry the first board loose. They heard me ask, did she give you written authorization from the board? They heard Linda say, he does not need to see anything from you. I am the HOA president. Someone in the back whispered, oh my God. The video continued. They heard her say the board voted. They heard her say continue. They heard her say you are making a very serious mistake. When the video ended, nobody spoke. For the first time since I had known her, Linda was not the loudest thing in the room, the evidence was. Then Frank stood up. My shed, he said. Linda snapped. This meeting is not about your shed. Frank kept going. You sent me the same kind of notice, said the board had reviewed it. I paid $1,200 because I thought I had no choice. Patricia stood next. My mother's ramp, she said. You called it a design violation until the management company told you to stop. You never put that in the minutes either. Now, people were turning toward the board table. Not toward me, toward Linda. That was when she made her final mistake of the night. She pointed at me and said, this is exactly what he does. He weaponizes paperwork against the community. I almost laughed, but I did not, because Denise from the management company stood up first. Mrs. Whitmore, she said, paperwork is how authority is documented. That sentence landed harder than anything I could have said. Alan pushed back from the table. I move that Linda Whitmore be suspended from all enforcement activity pending review. Another board member seconded it before Linda could speak. Linda said, "You cannot do this." Alan looked at the binder, then at the screen, then at the room full of neighbors who had finally seen what her authority looked like when someone asked for proof. "Yes," he said, "we can." The vote was not final removal. Not yet, that would come later. But that night, in front of the whole room, Linda lost the one thing she had built her power on: control. Then Denise added one more thing. Until this review is complete, the management company is freezing all active fines issued under Mrs. Whitmore's enforcement authority. No late fees, no lien notices, and no contractor charges will be processed from those files. The room changed again. Patricia looked at me. 3 other homeowners started whispering to each other. Linda opened her mouth, but for once, no official sounding phrase came out. The management company requested every violation file she had handled in the last 18 months. Frank asked for a refund review. Patricia asked for the ramp file. 3 other homeowners raised their hands before the meeting adjourned, and Linda, who had walked in with a clipboard and a prepared speech, left without speaking to anyone. She carried the same yellow folder under her arm, but this time, it did not look like authority. It looked like evidence. That night, when I got home, I walked out to the damaged fence. The broken boards were still stacked near Elaine's rose bed. The yard was quiet. For 3 weeks, Linda had said. The board voted for 3 weeks. She had said community standards. For 3 weeks, she had said I was the problem. But once the deed, the survey, the minutes, the invoice, the contractor statement, the emails, and the video were all in the same room, her story could not stand up by itself. Fake authority can survive gossip. It can survive fear. It can survive silence, but it does not survive the record, and Linda Whitmore had just learned that in front of everyone. The next morning, Maple Ridge was quieter than usual. That was the strange part. After a meeting like that, you expect noise, doors closing, phones ringing, standing in driveways, pretending not to gossip while absolutely gossiping. But the morning after Linda Whitmore lost control of the clubhouse, the neighborhood felt still. Not peaceful exactly, more like people were waiting to see what would happen when the woman who had scared them for years finally had to answer to the same rules she had used against everybody else. At 9:12, I received the first email from the management company. Denise wrote it. All fines and enforcement fees related to your rear fence have been placed on administrative hold pending board review. No lien action will proceed. No contractor charges will be assessed to your account. I printed it not because I needed another tab, but because by then, printing the truth felt like breathing at 10-4 Alan Prices. The board secretary sent a separate message. Daniel, I want to apologize. I should have asked for the minutes sooner. I should have required a formal vote before any enforcement action was discussed. I did not know. Linda had hired a contractor. That sentence mattered. I did not need Alan to be perfect. I needed him to be on the record. By noon, the HOA had sent a notice to every homeowner in Maple Ridge. It was short, too short if you ask me. But it said enough. All active violation files initiated under Linda Whitmore's enforcement authority were being reviewed. All pending fines were frozen. No lien notices would be processed until the review was complete. No contractor work would be authorized without written board approval and management company verification. For the first time in years, Maple Ridge got an HOA email that did not sound like Linda. That alone felt like progress. Linda did not resign immediately. People like Linda rarely do. They do not step down because they are wrong. They wait to see if the room will forget. They wait to see if shame cools off. They wait to see if people get tired before the paperwork catches up. But this time, the paperwork was already moving. The management company requested 18 months of violation files that included my fence, Frank's shed, Patricia's ramp, a mailbox repaint on Dogwood Lane, a driveway oil stain fine against a retired mechanic named Mr. Alvarez, a garden border violation against a widow named Ruth, who had planted marigolds along her walkway because they reminded her of her mother. Linda had built her power one private notice at a time. Now every notice had to survive daylight. Most of them did not. 2 weeks after the clubhouse meeting, the board held a closed executive session. Linda came. Of course she came. Frank told me later that she walked in with the same clipboard, the same sunglasses, and the same sharp little smile, as if confidence could still pass for evidence. It could not. The board reviewed the contractor invoice first, then the management company warning, then the security footage, then Alan S. email, then the violation of files. By the end of that session, Linda Whitmore was removed as HOA president by a board vote of 4-1. She was also removed from the Architectural Review Committee. Her access to the HOA violation system was suspended. She was barred from sending enforcement letters, contacting contractors, or representing the association in any compliance matter. The official explanation used softer words: procedural irregularities, failure to follow authorization requirements, actions outside the scope of board approval. That is how organizations speak when they are embarrassed. But everyone in Maple Ridge understood the plain version. Linda lied about a vote. Linda sent a contractor into my yard. Linda got caught, and this time, it was written down. The approved board minutes from that month recorded her removal, the suspension of her enforcement authority, and the new policy requiring written board approval before any contractor could touch a homeowner's property. The record did not whisper. It sat there in black and white. The money came next. First, the HOA wiped every fine on my account, the $150 a day, the $600 emergency enforcement fee, the processing charges, the lien preparation fee that had never been properly authorized. Gone. Then came the repair. The contractor who had damaged my fence still wanted to be paid. I did not blame him entirely. He had been careless, but he had also been lied to. His statement made that clear. The HOA initially tried to push the repair through insurance. The carrier asked for the board authorization. There was none. Then they asked for the vote. There was none. Then they asked who hired the contractor. That answer pointed back to Linda. In the end, the board voted to reimburse me directly for the full fence repair estimate, $3,800. They also paid for a new boundary confirmation from a licensed surveyor, not because I needed it, but because the board wanted a clean record after what Linda had done. The new survey said exactly what the old survey had said. The fence was mine, the land was mine. The problem had never been the property line. The problem had been fake authority standing on the wrong side of it. As for the contractor's unpaid balance, the HOA refused to approve the portion tied to Linda's personal request. The work order had come from her personal email. There was no board vote, no management company approval, no written authority. Whoa. The contractor pursued Linda directly for the remaining balance, whether she paid it out of pocket or settled it quietly. I never knew, but I knew this. The HOA would not cover a bill it had never voted to authorize. Frank got his review too. His shed file was a mess. No formal violation photos, no board vote, no approved minutes, no proof the shed was unapproved. Just Linda's notice, Linda's fine schedule, and Linda's statement that current standards required removal or payment. The HOA refunded him $1,200. Frank brought me a copy of the refund letter and stood in my driveway for a long minute without saying much. Then he said, "My wife told me to thank you." I told him, "Your wife kept the letters. Thank her." Patricia's ramp file reopened next. That one made people angry. Her mother had needed that ramp. It was not decorative. It was not optional, and Linda had treated it like a design problem because it did not match the front elevation. The management company recommended a formal apology. The board sent one. Patricia read it at the next open meeting. Well, not loudly, not dramatically. Just clearly enough for everyone to hear the sentence that mattered. The prior enforcement action should not have been issued. That was the first time I saw Patricia smile about any of it. Then came the changes that mattered most, not because they were dramatic, but because they made sure the next Linda could not do the same thing. Because getting rid of one Karen is satisfying. Changing the system that let her operate is what keeps the next one from taking her place. From that point forward, every violation notice in Maple Ridge had to include the exact covenant section allegedly violated. No more vague community standards. Every fine had to be tied to a dated board action or management company record. Every board vote had to appear in approved meeting minutes before enforcement could proceed. No board member could hire a contractor without written board approval, management company verification, and homeowner notice. No one could enter a private lot without clear written authority, and every homeowner had the right to request the evidence behind violation. before a fine began accruing. That last rule changed everything. Bullies count on silence. Linda had counted on people being too embarrassed, too tired, too busy, or too afraid to ask for proof. Now proof had to come first. Linda stopped attending meetings after the second month. At first, people said she was taking time away for personal reasons. Then her house went quiet. Her white SUV stayed in the garage. The porch decorations disappeared. The clipboard never came back by spring. Linda no longer served on any committee in Maple Ridge. Not architectural review, not neighborhood watch, not landscaping, not compliance, nothing. I do not know if she was ashamed. I do not know if people like Linda feel shame the way the rest of us do. But I know this, she no longer controlled Maple Ridge. She no longer decided whose grief counted as an excuse. She no longer used the word community like a weapon. And she never again stood in my yard telling a contractor to continue. The fence was repaired in early November. I asked the carpenter to save the broken boards. He looked at me strangely, but he stacked them beside the garage like I asked. Most of them were useless, split, warped, torn around the nail holes. But one board still had the little brass hook where Elaine's wind chime used to hang. I kept that one over the winter. I sanded it down. In the garage, not too much. I wanted the marks to stay. I cut it, sealed it, and used it as the backrest for a small bench near the rosebed in the spring when the first pink blooms opened. I hung Elaine's wind chime from the new fence. The sound was different from what I remembered. Softer maybe? Or maybe I was finally ready to hear it again. One Saturday morning, Frank came over with coffee. Patricia stopped by with her mother. Mr. Alvarez walked past and lifted one hand from the sidewalk. Ruth brought a small tray of marigolds and asked if Elaine would have minded a little color near the gate. I told her. Elaine would have approved. That was the part Linda never understood. A neighborhood is not protected by scaring people into silence. It is protected by people who know where the lines are. Property lines, legal lines, moral lines. And when somebody crosses them with a clipboard and a fake vote, the answer is not rage. The answer is the record, the deed, the survey, the minutes, the emails, the invoice, the camera. The witness who heard the sentence they thought nobody would repeat. Keep your receipts. Not because you want to fight. Because one day somebody may stand on your property, hold up a piece of paper and tell you they have authority they do not have. And when that day comes, confidence will not protect you. The record will. Linda built her power on fear, fake rules, and people staying quiet. But fake authority collapses the moment real evidence appears. So if you have an HOA Karen in your neighborhood, do not give her the meltdown she wants. Give her dates. Give her documents. Give her one polite email asking for the rule, the vote, the minutes, and the authority. Then keep every reply. Because bullies count on silence. They do not count on binders. Have you ever dealt with an HOA Karen who acted like she owned your property? Would you fight back immediately, or would you wait until you had perfect evidence? Comment your city and your worst HOA story below. And remember this, your home is not just a structure. It is your work, your family, your memory, and your line in the ground. Keep your receipts.